This is a study presented for the Speech Prosody Conference 2020, organized under the auspices of the University of Tokyo. The title of the study is Accent Groups versus Stress Groups in Czech Clear and Conversational Speech. The study was carried out by Volín and Radek Skarnitzl from the Institute of Phonetics, Charles University, Czech Republic. In many languages, syllables in utterances differ in prominence, and it is customary in descriptions to group non-prominent syllables together with a prominent syllable and to form some groupings called stress groups, stress units, phonological words, etc. Various concepts of these groupings originate from poetry, and they are inspired by the concept of foot. Under that influence, scholars expect regular alternations of strong weak syllables, but that usually can be only demonstrated in artificial texts. The question is, what happens in a natural conversational speech in polysyllabic languages? The Czech language is a West Slavic language spoken by about 10 million people. It is highly inflectional, and as a consequence, it has many polysyllabic words. The lexical stress is fixed to the first syllable of a word. Stress placement is independent of vowel length and vowel quality, so in the first syllable of a word, in the stressed one, any vowel can occur regardless of its length or quality. Another interesting thing is that the Czech language has stressed monosyllabic prepositions. These prepositions attract the stress from the following word, they form one stress groups with them, and the stress is on the preposition. The stress clash rule operates in Czech. It bans two consecutive stressed syllables apart from phrase final position, and it follows that we have to take care of monosyllables because it's the monosyllables that would cause stress clash. Existing literature, existing sources provide sets of rules for treating monosyllables and grouping them with longer words. So for our study, what is relevant is that once a word has two or more syllables, it will retain its lexical stress and it will form an independent stress group, albeit with a possible clitic, an acrusis, enclitic, stressed prepositions we talked about. So the research problem is based on our informal observations, because we notice that in current Czech, words cluster into stress groups, and it's not limited to just monosyllables described in the literature. We find longer stress groups in current Czech. As I said, those processes are not captured in literature to our best knowledge, and we only made one suggestion in a recent handbook about that. We can demonstrate this difference between our recent observations and traditional stress groups grammar on the following example. We have a sentence: Petrovi bylo nějak divně, tak jsme ho odvezli k lékaři. In English, Peter felt somehow strange, so we brought him to doctor. Now, the traditional rules would predict division 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 and 3, 3, 3 in the next phrase, so it would sound Petrovi bylo nějak divně, tak jsme ho odvezli k lékaři, but we more often hear something like this. Petrovi bylo nějak divně, tak jsme ho odvezli k lékaři. So we hear longer groupings. Now, we used material from two speaking styles. We used plain conversational speech and radio news reading, the so-called clear speech. As to the conversational speech, we had 6 university students discussing items and personalities of politicians from the news. And as for the news reading, we had 6 professional middle-aged newsreaders employed by the national broadcaster. That means high quality. This is an overview of our material. It can be seen that half of our speakers are women, half are men. And as to the number of words spoken, it's always several hundred. And as to the articulation rate, it is slightly higher in news reading. It's 15.1 phones per second, while in conversations, it's 14.8 phones per second. So the articulation rate in the two studied samples are comparable on average. We processed our material with Pratt and Prague labeler, and that provided semi-automatic labeling, which had to be manually corrected. And our labeled levels were phones, syllabic nuclei, including syllabic consonants that are allowed in Czech. We had a level of words based on orthographic words, a level of stress groups, and level of prosodic phrases, also termed in phrases. And this is the presentation of our results. We were first interested in the number of words in one stress group. So it can be seen that one-word stress groups are prevalent in both styles, but more common in clear speech than in conversational speech. Stress groups consisting of 2 words, second pair of columns, is more or less balanced. 3-word stress groups are more common in conversational speech. There were no 6-word stress groups, and the 5-word stress groups were only found in conversations, not in reading. So the difference between the speech styles in this was found as statistically significant, and clearly there is more word compounding in conversations. We were also interested in the composition of stress groups in terms of syllables. So again, we can see that there are more monosyllabic and more dissyllabic stress groups in conversations, and that stress groups in clear speech are usually longer. There were no stress groups of 11 syllables or more, and anything above 7 syllables was quite. Now we're getting to our research focus, the difference between the theoretical predictions and what we observed in our material. Here we have a picture of 3-syllable stress groups, 4-syllable stress groups, and 5-syllable stress groups. And we can see the striped column is the theoretical prediction that literature predicts more 3-syllable stress groups and fewer 4-syllable and 5-syllable stress groups. In the next step, we focused on the 2-word stress groups, because there are so many configurations of words in stress groups that we had to limit our attention to only the most common occurrence, which is two words in one stress group. And for the polysyllables, literature predicts only x or 1 plus x or x plus 1, meaning that a polysyllabic word of x syllables can have one monosyllable before or one monosyllable after to form a stress group. So there were 21 configurations of two-word stress groups in our material, but 9 of those were illegal. They were not of the form x or 1 plus x or x plus 1. And this is the overview of those. And it can be seen that these illegal stress groups made 14.3% in clear speech and almost 18% of all the stress groups in dialogues. One additional fact is that if we look at the larger context, which is prosodic phrase and its length in stress groups, we can find even greater differences between the two speech styles. Phrases that are made of just one stress group are much more frequent in conversations, as the first pair of columns in the graph. And longer phrases were found in the clear speech sample. So we can say that one stress group phrases in conversation are quite frequent, and when we looked at their composition, we found out that they are often made of one word. That is something, again, that proves the difference between the two styles. So given that we have found a non-negligible amount of illegal stress groups, what do we do next? We can expand the existing description of the Czech language. We can redefine the legality, or we can adopt a different approach. We can adopt different terminology already used in some languages. We can take stress only as a potential, which can be studied on isolated words or contextless phrases. And we can use the word accent for prominence materialized in connected speech. That would then introduce the term accent group into the description of Czech prosody, and an accent group would be heard in natural utterances and could comprise can comprise one or more theoretical stress groups. So as to conclusions, we have provided quantitative description of two speaking styles. We found differences between the current sound of Czech and the older descriptions. And we would like to verify this in larger samples of recordings. First of all, we need more speakers. We only have 12 speakers, and it would be also interesting to look at some other genres or speech styles. What needs to follow are the acoustic and semantic analyses of the groupings. And finally, we would love to experiment with perceptual consequences of different groupings on to the listeners. Here are the references that can be found in our paper in proceedings, and we thank you for your attention.